Today we will spend some time looking at this whole matter of business acquisition. Business acquisition. Generally, we're looking at the topic, but we want to focus or zero in more on what is referred to as leveraged buyouts. People refer to it as LBO, leveraged buyouts. As a matter of fact, this whole leverage buyout concept under the umbrella of business acquisition is really a part of what is commonly referred to as mergers and acquisitions. Fancy term, but nothing much to it. When businesses are thinking of acquiring other businesses, so you find that sometimes a business may want to have some level of expansion. They may consider what is referred to as a vertical expansion or a horizontal expansion. So vertical, naturally, up, down. So a retailer may decide, or a group of retailers may decide to acquire some wholesale facility to have more secured supply. So we call that a vertical acquisition or integration, where they say, okay, I'm here at this level in the chain, but I'm going to acquire a business at some other level. The opposite is true. A wholesaler may decide that we also want to get into retail, but instead of going out to start retail activities from the ground up, they may take the decision to acquire some retail outlets. Okay, so those are acquisition. Then we have the horizontal. Okay, horizontal, where you're just expanding along the same plane, along the same zone. So you may be a retailer and you're servicing the southeast, and you decide that you want to expand your market into other areas. So you decide, okay, but at the same retail level. So you could make a decision, or an entity could make a decision to acquire, merge with other like entities in the retail trade at that same level, hence horizontal. Good. So we want to focus today on leveraged buyouts. Leveraged buyouts. Leveraged buyouts is both a selling and a buying concept, meaning that business owners, a company, or the owners, the shareholders, whatever, of a company may wish to dispose of the company for whatever reason. And we're going to look at some of the reasons in a while. And so they could consider a leverage buyout process to dispose of this business. On the other hand, potential buyers of businesses may contemplate using this method called leverage buyout to acquire. So, what is this whole concept of a leveraged buyout? The first word, leveraged, is speaks to the heart of what the transaction is all about. Essentially, it is saying that we are going to enter into a buying or selling arrangement, an acquisition or disposal, whatever, but the funding, the financing of this transaction is going to be heavily skewed towards debt financing. So if A is interested in buying B's company, and B's company is going for $10 million, then in a leveraged buyout, A is seeking to acquire B's company by using, well, debt, predominantly debt. We're using debt mainly. Small amount of equity. So in most leverage buyout arrangements, you find that the purchaser will come with just about, say, 10, maybe 15% at max, but usually around 10% of equity, own money, into the transaction, whereas the 90% of the funding for such a transaction is through debt financing, leveraged buyout. Okay. Now, the beauty about that, as you can right away understand, is it allows or it facilitates companies to acquire other companies by using very little personal funds, little equity. So they are not exposing themselves in a significant way by putting out a large quantum of equity into this transaction. Yes, they're coming up with their 10%, but most of the funding is done through debt financing, basically a loan. Now, naturally, once we speak of debt, then right away, what comes to mind is okay, so what is the security? What's the guarantee? What's the safeguard to the lender of this money? Why should this person be willing or be comfortable, or this entity, this institution, this bank, be comfortable, be willing to enter into such an arrangement? Now, the collateral, the level of security or assurance that is given to such a lender really comes from the joint assets and cash flows. Very important to know. Joint assets and cash flows of both the company that is making the purchase and those of the company that is being acquired. Meaning, the company that is being acquired would have its asset base. The company that's being acquired would have its cash flows. The company who's acquiring would also have its asset base and cash flows. So the joint assets of company being acquired and company making the acquisition and their respective cash flows is what is really put forward as the collateral, as the security for this debt, this loan that is to be received to consummate the buyout. So leverage buyout. That's what it's all about. Now the question is, why would a company be interested in a leverage buyout? And remember, I said earlier on that although when we speak of leverage buyouts, we normally focus on the side of the company who's making the acquisition, the buying company. But the truth is that leverage buyout can also be viewed from the side of the company that is selling, meaning that and I'll just say LBO going forward, leverage buyout, the LBO can be initiated by a company having an interest to sell, because such a company, for whatever reason, especially where you have companies that are privately owned and the owners have done their 30, 40 years. They are now on the verge of retiring. They want to move on to some other venture or just really to retire. They may consider, okay, it's time for us to now dispose of, to sell this business. And one of the ways to go is to seek to enter into a leverage buyout arrangement. Okay. So that is it from the selling, from the company from the seller's point of view. I said earlier that in most instances when LBOs are mentioned, they are looked at from the acquiring company's perspective. And again, why? It's because sourcing the funds to acquire this company is really where this whole concept of leverage comes in, because yes, it is heavily debt financed, as opposed to equity finance. Um, Now, why would a company, like a business owner, remember I said, why would a business owner consider a leverage buyout, entering into such a transaction? And there are three key components that are considered when such a decision is made. The decision may involve all three. It may be one of, two of, but those are the general things. One, sometimes you have a public company. We won't get into the detail, but generally speaking, public companies traded publicly as its shareholders, etc., etc. Okay. Quite often, a public company, you may find that it has grown over time, and basically the management, the structure of the company naturally is handled and managed by, yes, board, but driven by the consensus of shareholders, what they want. Sometimes it is advisable to take this public company and make it into a private company. Why? How? When you have a company that's a private company, then the latitude that management and owners have to change, to restructure, to reorganize is wider and much more varied than when you're talking about a public company. So there are times when a public company is taken and converted to a private company. Because at the heart of most leverage buyout is this school of thought, or this intent to acquire this company with debt, predominantly debt, work to improve the efficiency, profitability, and viability of this company over the next, say, 2, 3, 4 years. So while you're doing that, you're still making payment on that debt because it is expected that the cash flow of this company, of the acquired company, would be adequate to service this debt. And at the end of that 3, 4, 5 years, when you have now improved on the processes, on the efficiencies, etc., so that this company is now a much more desirable company, you can turn around and decide, okay, it is now time for us to reintroduce this company to the public. So we took it from a public company, privatized it, and we acquired it through the LBO. Know that it's a private company, lot more latitude to do what needs to be done in terms of restructuring and reorganizing in the interest of efficiency and profitability. And now that you have it where you want it, you can now reintroduce it to the market. In other words, you make an IPO, initial public offering to the public, because it's a new company in a sense, and you may find that the demand and the interest in such a company will be greatly heightened compared to its status prior to. So that's one of the reasons why we may consider going through the LBO to acquire a public company and then convert it into a private, so that we do what we need to do and then reintroduce it to the public in a better light. In a better light. Good. That's one thing. Again, there are times when you have large companies, and one of the downfall of large companies that quite often you find that inefficiencies, creeping over time. It get very large, harder to manage. The parts and pieces are not synchronizing with each other as when it was a younger, smaller, leaner, meaner company, so to speak. And so there sometimes it comes a time where you may consider, or companies will consider, that what, this is such a large company. I think we need to break it up. All right. So because it is very easy sometimes to identify those components of the company that is least efficient. Let's put it this way, least efficient. And so if we can acquire this through a LBO, and then we can break it up by dissecting, identifying those parts that need to be revamped, re-engineered, looking at the areas that need to basically be removed, okay, then that will help to enhance the efficiencies and profitability of this company. So again, sometimes this is for the purpose of really breaking up the company, that you say, let's acquire it through LBO, let's work on it, get it back into its efficient state, and then we have a better entity to go forward with, to be more profitable. And so these shareholders possibly would then be in a position to get greater returns. I think another reason, or possible reason for doing this, would to be, sometimes you have a company that is underperforming. And when I say underperforming, not necessarily that it is that large, as was the prior example where we say to break up a large company. It's just that the company as it is may be underperforming. Okay. Now remember, bear in mind that whereas a big benefit of LBO is that you only have to find a small amount of equity, your own funds, because most of it is funded through the debt, through the loan. Of course, two things to bear in mind. One, naturally you took on a large debt, and so we're talking about debt servicing. That's a major thing. Secondly, you have to real we need to bear in mind or keep in mind that the cash flow needs to be able to service the debt and at the same time work to achieve what the original intention of the LBO was, which is to generate a level of activity, a level of cash flow that can make the company overall more profitable. Hence, its shareholders, owners, will be better off at the end of the day. End of the day. So sometimes when you have a company that is underperforming, um, it is possible that the business owner would want to exit. And there are times you can see the storm coming. Huh? Business owners are in tune with this. You can see that, okay, time has passed, and I can see where operations are really getting less profitable compared to past years. And so I see a level of underperformance within the structure of the company. So quite often owners may say, I think it is time for us to think of getting out of this business. Um, so one option would be to l- gradually close down shop, but that's not really the intention when you go into business and you create your company. So often, owner or owners may want to get out of the business, but want to still have the continuity of this business, and so they will consider LBO to, so that you say, okay, other persons may want to take it over, restructure, reorganize, revamp it, give it new life, and take it forward. So that's another reason again why we'd have some LBO. Another example, or another reason rather, for going LBO, for acquiring another company is to really get rid of the competition. Mhm. Get rid of the competition. So you're into um, manufacture of product X, and you have several competitors around, and you consider that yes, it's a good business, the industry is vibrant, but there are so many others in it that it is really diluting the earnings of each person because we're all operating in this space, and so it may be considered wise to acquire the competitor. All right, so you will be aware of examples or situations where you have a large company producing product X, but there are a number of small entities around producing the same thing. Quite often, the large company will approach those smaller establishments and say, "Okay, I'm going to just buy you out and take or mark you." Those larger companies more than likely will be in a position to just outright buy without having to go seek financing. But because LBO is an option, then such a company, even though it may have enough cash to make the acquisition as a cash purchase, may not consider it to be the best thing to do. Go LBO, fund the transaction with heavy debt, and leave your available resources and cash flow to really enhance the profitability of the company. Cool. Great. Now, when we've looked at the LBO in terms of the general structure of it and some of the reasons why a person or business may want to consider going LBOs, and also recognizing that the LBO is something that can be contemplated either from the seller's perspective, someone initiating that move because he's interested in selling his business, or it can be from the point of a person seeking to buy. Okay, that's LBO. Leverage buyout. Good. Now we want to look We're going to transition by looking at the different types of leverage buyouts. Very important, different types, because some are from the perspective of the person interested in selling, some are from the perspective of the person wishing to acquire. So we'll be looking at leveraged, or as a matter of fact, the different types of leveraged buyout.